Hello and welcome back. We are deeply into discussion over what is known as the fuzzy inference systems. And basically what we are trying to do is a very simple kind of a thing. We know that they were production systems where there were a set of conditions that model the system. Those conditions were nothing but something like rules, and those rules were fired whenever the conditions were true, whenever the dead conditions were true, and based on those firing of rules there was some kind of inference that was made, there was some kind of reasoning that was done, there was some kind of output that was produced by the system. We have exactly the same fundamental where we have only made in one kind of change, is that the entire modeling can be fuzzy, where something can be true to some extent and false to some other extent. And that is all what entirely changed the complete paradigm, where we had to remodel not only the system but the underlying mathematics behind these systems. What we have succeeded in doing so far is that only the antecedent part of one rule, that we are able to convert into a number, and what that number denotes is the degree to which that rule would be fired. So till now, if you give me any system where the inputs have already been broken up into membership functions along with their curves, the outputs have already been broken into membership functions along with their curves. Of course, the outputs part of it we are not dealing right now. What we would be able to do is that we will find out the various membership values of various inputs to various membership curves, and based on all those values, we'll analyze the rule that we have been given, only the antecedent part, and by the application of and, or, and not, we'll be able to convert it up into some kind of a number. We'll be able to convert it up into some kind of a number, and what that number denotes is the degree to which that rule is fired. So the antecedent part is done. Now we have to do with the other half of the story, the consequent part. So any rule that we have, any general rule, let me say, would be nothing but an antecedent part and a consequent part. So if I say if variable I is membership function of the variable I and the membership function j, I can have an optional not over here. Let me right now assume that all the conditions are fixed by not. I'll have all the various membership functions, then I'll have a then. This is not, this is and. Let me assume they are all separated by and. The consequent part would state is that if the output variable I is the membership function of the output variable I, and let me say that the j is membership function of this, and of course there are multiple outputs. There are multiple outputs, so I have some O1 here, I have O2 here, membership function of the variable O2, and the, let me say, the kth membership function being fired, and so on. All separated by and over here. This is what is the general architecture of a rule so far that we have studied. I am done with this part where every rule would be converted up into some kind of a number, which is the firing strength of this rule. Only I am considering only one rule over here in the system right now. So I have been able to convert it into the firing strength of this rule. And I need to work over. My task is not yet done, the consequent part is entirely left. As for example, let me say that if rain is high and road is bad, then let me say drive is very careful and accident is something like likely. And I know very careful is nothing but a membership function, likely is nothing but a membership function. So let me say my drive was ultimately broken down into a set of membership functions. My drive was ultimately broken down into a set of membership functions, and similarly my accident was again broken down into a set of membership functions. What I have is that I have framed this kind of rule between two inputs and two outputs. I already know that I'll see the high membership function. There will be a membership function called as high. I'll look at that, I'll see whatever is the present value of rain. I'll find out its membership of degree to the membership function high. I'll note it down here. Similarly, load, I'll see what is the actual quality. I'll see how much does it belong to bar, the membership function bar. I'll again physically note down this value over here. These will be two membership value. I'll take the minimum of it. I'll get out this firing strength, and then I need to find out what is the probable value of drive and accident. That is one indicator output that my system has for drive as well as accident. That is one indicator output that I'll get, one for drive and one for accident. And how I get this indicator output is what we'll be considering in this consequent part of the discussion, that is the agenda of discussion for this hour. And what would be the consequent part of it? That is exactly what we would be discussing for now. I've got this beautiful word called as and we have seen this and. This was what was known as a fuzzy Boolean operator that we converted it into a fuzzy Boolean operator. Now, one thing to understand is the and used in the antecedent part and the and used in the consequent part are not the same. So, this is not a fuzzy Boolean operator. The purpose of this and is using a min operator or using a product operator, find out the membership value of the resultant condition that we get from the union of these two conditions. That is why we call this as a Boolean AND operator. What this AND represents is nothing but a separator. This is nothing but a separator. It will look very bad if I say then drive is very careful, accident is likely. So I just use it as an English language word and, where and is doing nothing, it is performing no operation. All that it is doing is that it is trying to separate individual output variables and nothing else. So this and basically has got no significance. It just denotes that the various output variables will get their individual outputs. When we were discussing the neural networks, we always said that multiple output systems, will break them apart into single output systems. And multiple output systems are nothing but multiple of these single output systems. Here I will assume more or less the same thing. The way in which this output is calculated is exactly the way in which this output or the consequent outputs are calculated. So I will only in my entire discussion calculate the indicative output by this rule of one particular output. I only calculate one particular output over here. The rest of it is what we calculate is that will follow exactly the same norms. They follow exactly the same norms. So given, I'll go away with this. Right now, the rule can always be broken up into a part to some firing degree followed by this operator which is called as then. I have a consequent part. The consequent part is nothing but one single output. So let me say that the consequent right now is one single output, and let me say that is nothing but OI is membership function of the output variable I. Let me say the jth membership function of it. So let me say this is nothing but the accident is bad. This is known as the another operator. This is of course another operator, and we need to solve only this operator that maps the antecedents to the consequence. We are trying to model this operator that maps the antecedents to the consequence, and that is all what we would be doing, and this operator is known as the implication operator. This is what is known as the implication operator that maps the antecedents to the consequence to give us some idea of what the indicative output of this of what some value of this output is. So the implication operator basically takes in two inputs. One is this firing degree of the rule that we have already calculated, and the other is a membership function that we know. If it was that road is bad, I had something called as road over here, and I had this, it's bad, so this was the membership function of bad over here, and this was mu road over here. So there was all between 0 and 1. This is what in second input it takes, and the first input is nothing but a firing degree, let me say mu, that again of course lies between 0 and 1. Now remember, be it the AND operator, OR operator or the NOT operator, all the outputs were constrained to 0 and 1. I did not mathematically do it, but max, min, probor, all these 1 minus x, they all will lie between 0 and 1 when the input lies between 0 and 1. That's why my firing degree is constrained between 0 and 1. Again, I'll go away with this part. This is what we are basically trying to do. Given a firing degree and a membership function, we are trying to find out what the indicative output is. So the implication operator takes in a firing degree x. Now because this is a numeric input, let me say x. A membership function y, that is the output membership function y, and it does two things. And either one of them can be used for system modeling. Again, I'll be writing down two equations. We'll be using any one of them, same as in the case of AND. I can say min, or I can say as product. Now again remember, this is exactly the same two conditions that I used for and also used a minimum or a product. The only difference was that AND was getting two real valued inputs. It was getting 0.5, 0.8, 0.8, 0.7, 0.1, 0.3, whereas my implication operator is getting a real valued input x over here and a membership function y over here. So it's getting a real valued input, and the second value is a membership function, and therefore conventionally writing down this min is wrong. I will have to say that for all y is a member of y, and here also I will have to write down for all y is a member of y. That is what the actual meaning is, but for simplicity we write it down like this. This is a real value input, and this is an entire membership function. This is again a real valued input, and this is again an entire membership value function. So let me state down what this would be graphically. Let me state down what this would be graphically. I've got in two inputs. The first is nothing but a real valued input. I cannot do anything about it. So I can simply say x equals to 0.8. And the other is a curve like this. This is the same output curve that we had drawn. What min does is, it takes the minimum. So from here, let me start taking the minimum. Minimum of 0, 0.8 and 0 is 0, 0 and 0.8 and something like 0.1 over here is 0.1. So it will follow this curve until it reaches 0.8. Minimum of 0.8 and 0.8 is nothing but 0.8. So it will stop here at this 0.8 value. Now minimum of 0.8 over here and a 0.9 over here is nothing but 0.8. 0.8 over here and 1 over here is nothing but 0.8. 0.8 over here and 0.9 over here is nothing but 0.8. 0.8 over here and 0.8 over here is nothing but 0.8. 0.8 over here and 0.8 over here is 0.8. 0.8 over here and 0.7 over here is 0.7, and it follows this curve. So it transits up to here. 0.8 it becomes constant, and then it descends. That is what is the application of min. That is what is the application of min. Now in AND I was taking in point by point addition of two graphs. Here what I am doing is that I am taking point by point addition of a real valued input, so that is like 0.8. I can graphically plot it like this. This is x, the membership value does not change. This curve and this curve, where one is a constant curve. So it's a real valued input when applied towards a complete membership function curve, or I can say a constant curve when applied to a variable kind of curve. And this is what I get by the application of bin operator. Now when you look at this, it seems that I have sliced out this curve across 0.8. I have taken this, I have kind of sliced it up towards 0.8. That's why it is visible like a slice over here. This is the actual membership function. This is visible as a slice over here. That is why it's sometimes referred to as the slicing operator. So you taken something and across 0.8 you cut the entire curve. 0.8 denotes the degree to which that rule was fired. Across 0.8 you cut the entire curve, and this is the curve that you get. So that is what is known as the slicing operator. I'll move up straight away into the second kind of function that we have got. That is the product. What product gives is the same curve compressed to this degree. It gives me exactly the same curve. The shape will be exactly the same. It's just that it will be compressed by a factor of 0.8 over here. The way to understand it, 0.8 into 0, 0.8 into 0.1 over here, that will be 0.8 into 0.1 will be 0.08 over here. 1 into 0.8 will be 0.8 over here, that's what the maximum it can get. 0 into 0.8 over here will be 0.8 over here. 0.8 over here and 0.8 over here will be 0.64 over somewhere around here. That's why the entire curve is compressed to a degree of 0.8. It's like the y-axis has been compressed to 0.8. And that's why it's sometimes the product, it's sometimes also known as the compression operator. It will give a kind of feeling that the entire curve is being compressed to some degree. It will give a feeling that I am compressing the entire kind of curve from normal to a much compressed format. And that's why it's known as a compression operator. So there was slicing operator and there was a compression operator, and based on both these cases I used a real number and got some kind of curves over here. Now this curve is exactly the output that I am looking for. This curve is exactly the output that I am looking for. The only difference is that the output is not crisp, but it's fuzzy in nature. I did not get an output like 0.8, I did not get an output like 0.7, I did not get an output like 0.9, but I got an output saying, let me say the output was in the range of, again let me assume 0 to 1 for simplicity. In reality it can be any value to any value, it can be between any lower bound to any upper bound. So in this case the output was nothing but point 2 to the confidence level, to the probability or to the membership degree of 0.1, 0.4 to the confidence value of 0.6, 0.6 to the again to the confidence value of 0.6, 0.5 to again to the membership confidence value of 0.1, and 1 to the confidence value of 0. That denotes, let me say, a 0.5 to the membership value, confidence value of 8. I am 80% sure that the output will be 0.5. I am 60% sure that the output will be 0.6. I am 10% sure that the output will be 0.5. I am 10% sure that the output will be 0.2. I am 60% sure that the output will be 0.4. So this is exactly the output that I am looking for. The only difference is that the output is not crisp in nature, it is fuzzy in nature, where I got in multiple outputs to multiple degrees. So one way that I can probably represent is in terms of fuzzy number, 0.2 to the degree of 0.1, 0.4 to the degree of 0.6, 0.5 to the degree of 0.8, and so on. Of course, it's a continuous curve, so I ideally need to write down the membership function. But this is into some discrete kind of set theory notation that I had used in the earlier lecture, and into the format of a membership function, a continuous membership function. This is what it would represent. This is the equation that this curve would follow. Again, to better understand it, let me take in the example that there was something like drive over here. The output careful was being plotted. My carefulness needed to be very high, where carefulness was plotted on a scale of 0 to 100. I got a rule that fired this to the extent of 0.5. So basically, by the application of the MET operator, I sliced down this curve, and this is what I got. Let me say this was 80 over here. What this denotes is my output is 80, so by the degree of 80, by a value of 80, I need to be very careful when I'm driving, and the conference value of this 80 as the output is 0.5, 100 the conference value is 0.5, something like 50 the conference value is very low, it's something around 0.2 over here. So the output of drive being careful is 50. And I'm 20% sure of this output being correct. The probability of being correct is 20%. Again, the membership value cannot be exactly called as the probability, because probability, the entire summation needs to be 1. What my membership value will of course not behave like. So, little wrong technique when I use the term probability, but then again we know that while we were realizing the probability theory, we said that membership value and probability, they almost go hand in hand, so there is something very common towards both of them. So this is my output axis, and this is the degree to which I am sure of those being output, and this is what is the membership curve of the output variable selected. This is what is the membership curve of the output variable being selected by the application of one rule, and that is what I have been able to do with the antecedents and the consequence by the application of this operator known as the implication operator. That is what I have been able to achieve. So there were antecedents I related to the consequence by this implication operator. One thing again would be that since there are multiple outputs, since my entire system has multiple outputs, there will not be one curve like this, there will be many curves like this, one curve for each output. So there is a drive will have one curve over here. There was carefulness, it will be another curve over here. There was something like accident, that will be the third curve over here. So all the outputs will be different curve by the application of this implication operator. That is what I get in my entire fuzzy system modeling, and this I know that can be handled exactly in the similar way that I handle a single output. So that was all about the application of the implication operator. Now if we just kind of realize what are we able to do is that, let me have a look at the entire system at large. Multiple inputs broken up, each input broken up into multiple membership functions. So I had for each input multiple membership functions, for each output multiple membership functions. I had a set of rules made. So there was like R1, R2, R3, Rn. There were all these rules that were made. Each rule denoting some kind of condition, each rule denoting some kind of condition over which that rule is activated. Each rule was a collection of antecedents and consequence. The antecedents was broken down into the firing power of that rule by the application of the implication operator. So there was something like antecedent over here, a consequent over here, antecedent over here, consequent over here, and so on. For each rule, this denoted the firing power, this denoted an output curve. Again, I'm using only a single output because multiple output systems can be broken down into single output systems. they can be replicated for single output system. So I, by the using this application of this, by using this filing power, I could use the mathematics of this implication operator and get nice curves like this. Let me say some rule did not fire at all, some fired only up to a very small extent, and I could get multiple curves like this. Each rule is nothing but a curve now, and each curve denotes the actual output of that variable. Let me say the variable OI, it denotes the actual curve of that variable OI. It denotes precisely what that variable OI, just the thing is that the output given is fuzzy in nature. So next what I am going to do is that I am going to devise a mechanism. I am going to devise a mechanism by which the multiple rules can be summated together. I am going to devise a mechanism by which the indicative output to variable rules can be combined, because what the various rules are nothing but the various rules denote that what probable the output can be, what is the probable output as per each and every judgment of each and every rule. What I am supposed to do is that I am going to make a cumulative judgment based on the recordings of all these rules, and that is what I have it by the name of an operator known as aggregation operator. This is what is the aggregation operator. What an aggregation operator does is that it simply aggregates the outputs of various rules. It considers all the various outputs given by all the various rules and it aggregates it up. So by this I can make a multiple rule system into a single output system, into a single rule system where I get the final output of my whatever my system judged it to be. So aggregation operator, what it gets it as the input are nothing but membership curves. So membership curve 1, membership curve 2, membership curve 3. This is what are the inputs. The output of this aggregation operator is a single membership curve M. It gets in multiple membership curves and it tries to output a single membership function curve. This membership function curves can be formed in two ways. Either by addition. Normally I am taken only two membership function curves because multiple membership functions curve will be able to reduce them into groups of two membership functions curves. Similarly, as we did with and or operator, we will be able to group them up into couples of two. So this is either by something known as AND, where I physically add in the values, or by this max, wherein I simply take in maximum of these two. So in this way, what I am basically trying to do is that I am trying to aggregate the various membership function curve using either an add operator or a max operator. The only thing to be sure about when using the add operator is that M1 can lie anywhere between 0 and 1. A single unit value of M1 can lie anywhere between 0 to 1. M2 can lie anywhere between 0 and 1. So it's likely that the membership value crosses 1. So we'll have to suppress it to 1. Anything greater than 1 would be delta as 1. So now again let me take in two membership function curves and perform an add operation over them. Let me say one was over here where it was some output. This was the probability of that between 0 to 1. This was the membership curve of this, and let me say the second was this. This was the output. This was the probability of that output anywhere between 0 to 1. I'll take in a max first. A max will again be an output between 0 to 1. And the membership value of this output, that is what we need to find out. and that will be nothing but here this curve rises up, it is anyway more than this, it falls back. When this falls back, this rises up, this becomes a curve. Similarly to the OR operator when I am trying to take in the max. So this is what would be using the max operator. This denotes exactly what the system output is. Apart from that the output, apart from being discrete, it's rather fuzzy in nature. So I've not got a crisp output, I've got a continuous range of output. And again, using the fuzzy theory, we can say that the output is, if it's between 0 to 1, again let us say it's 0.2 and the degree of this is, let's say, 0.3. So the output is physically 0.2, but then the confidence that I have is 0.3 over it. Or the membership value of 0.2 being the output is nothing but 0.3, where I use the actual terms. So this is what the max does. This is exactly what the max does. It tries to take in a pointwise max of this and this. So I'll take a maximum of both these, I'll take in the maximum of both these, and this is the curve I'll get. The other operator is the add. Again between 0 to 1. Here I'll add in. So 0 plus 0 gets 0. 0 plus this will be somewhere like this. 0 plus this value over here will be again somewhere like this. I'll get a region where it is maximum, and then it will drop. Again, towards the end, this is 0, this is 0, so the final value will be 0. I'll get in something, a good curve like this. Again, the actual curve should have been like this, but then I have constrained my output to be a maximum of 1. I have kind of constrained my output that can receive a maximum value of 1. So that's why my actual output will follow this kind of curve by the implication of add. Add is basically simply taking the addition of all the various outputs, follow the data fired by the various kinds of rules. That's what I'm doing simply when it comes to add. And anything more than 1, I'm taking up to be 1 itself. Again, this denotes the actual output curve, except for the fact that this output is not crisp in nature, it's fuzzy in nature. So again, taking a look back, where we had a huge set of rules, using all the antecedent path and consequent path, we were able to reduce that rule for any single output as a single output curve. Now what we have been able to do with by this aggregation curve, we have been able to club together all the various outputs predicted by the various rules, and we are able to get a single curve. We are able to get a single output that is fuzzy in nature. We are able to get a single fuzzy output as a final curve. So my actual problem has been solved right now. I had a set of inputs and I have got a single output. I've got the indicator measure of what the output would be. I've got exactly the output. The only problem is that the output is fuzzy in nature. But any system that we dealt with, either in the neural networks or the evolutionary computing so far has been presented mainly optimization, but even to the in evolutionary computation, we were supposed to give in crisp outputs. We were supposed to give in crisp output. So if the output that we needed to give was that how much would it rain tomorrow? 80 centimeters? How carefully do I drive? To the extent of 80%? What is the probability that my system gets attacked? 0.75. So these are the crisp outputs that we are all used to, and therefore we need to, in this system, we need to give in some crisp output so that the end user understands. The end user will not understand these curves as the final output. So we need to convert these curves into a hard-coded crisp output. So we need to convert this fuzzy output into a crisp output, and that is what is done by a defuzzification operator. This is the task that is performed by the last operator that we will be studying in this fuzzy domain. This is the last operator that we will be studying. This is called as a defuzzification operator. All that the defuzzification operator does is that to convert a fuzzy output into a crisp output that the end user understands. Now remember, when we started out this fuzzy modeling, we said that the first thing that we need to do is that we break up inputs into a set of membership functions. That was known as fuzzification. Converting inputs into a set of membership functions into a set of membership function curves. That was known as the fuzzification. This is the converse of it. We are converting fuzzy numbers into real crisp numbers, and that is what is known as defuzzification. The input to a defuzzification operator is a curve. It's a membership function curve, and the output of a defuzzification operator is a crisp number, a real number. So the last operator that we study out here is the defuzzification operator. Now again, the membership value, or sometimes I wrongly quote it as the probability value, which are more or less the same thing, apart from that the membership values do not obey the probability rules. So the membership value gives us an indicative idea as how likely are the various outputs values, the various crisp output value, how likely are they to be the final system output. Something with a membership value of 0.8 is more likely to be the system output than something which has a membership value of 0.1. So in defuzzification, all I'll try to do is that I'll try to find out crisp numbers having high membership values. I'll try to find out crisp numbers having high membership values, and then what I'll do is that I'll give these values as the final system output. So I need to be more biased towards the values, the crisp values in my membership function curve enjoying high membership values. The membership value that was plotted as the y-axis denotes how likely is some x to be the output. So one of the very simple ways to do it is simply taking a mean. I simply taken a very simple way would be I taken a mean, that is known as a centroid population. So suppose there is an output O. This is what is the mu O, anywhere between 0 and 1. Let this be the curve. This curve is nothing but mu O. I need to find out the mean of this. I simply need to find out the mean of this, and how am I going to find out the mean of this? Let me say the actual system output, let me say it y. Now y is nothing but the mean of O. It is nothing but the mean of O weighted by the membership curve. It is in some way weighted by the membership function curve. So let me not say this is as mu O, let this curve be called as G. So it is O weighted by G divided by integral of G. It's a continuous curve. It's a very, very continuous curve. That's why I use an integral over a summation. Ideally, if it had been a discrete curve, I would have used a summation sign in place of an integral sign. The only reason of using an integral is that this curve is continuous in nature, and all I am doing is that I am finding out the mean of O. I am finding out the mean of my output O. I am finding out what is the mean, where any output O, it actually denotes G as its likeliness. This is what is the output, and this is what is the weight. So summation Wi xi divided by summation Wi, this is exactly what this equation represents. That is a simple centroid that I have taken. It is a simple mean kind of technique that is used. The other thing that I take is called as the bisector. This is a continuous curve, and I try to find out an area bisector between them. I try to find out an area bisector between them. Let me say that my y was the area bisector. So if I have Y as the area bisector, all that I would like to find out is, let me say the lower bound was 0 and 1 over here. Start up from the lowest position, go up till the position Y, find out what the area is. To find out what the area is, I'll basically be using the equation, and that should be same as I went from 0 to Y. I need to go from Y to my maximum limit, let me say 1 over here. I went up from 0 to Y, this area should be exactly equal to the area that I go from Y to 1, and the same area. So the left area should be equal to right area. I am trying to find out an area bisector. The region where this area bisector bisects the curve. So this area should be equal to this area. The region Y where it bisects is what my output is. So this is the second output that I take. So two very frequently used technique, the centroid and the bisector, that I use to convert a fuzzy number into a real crisp output. And this is what when we are studying the defuzzification operator, but then there are more defuzzification operators that are possible. I'll briefly state down all these. The other operator can be mean of maximum. So let me say my curve was nothing but something like this. Let me say this was what was my actual curve. This was what the curve that I had. This was my fuzzy output O over here. Let me say from the same notation, this is the curve G where it lies anywhere between 0 to 1. This was, let me say, what was my actual output. I need to calculate, I need to defuzzify it. I need to convert this from a general fuzzy output into a crisp output. So all I do is that I find out what the mean is. I find out the area of maximum membership value. I find out the region where the maximum membership value is recorded. It may be discrete in nature, or it may be continuous in nature like this, or it may be discrete in nature like this. I find out all these areas and I simply take the mean of this. I simply taken the mean of this. That is what is done by my mean of maximum, sometimes also denoted as MOM. I find out the mean where my maximum membership value is being displayed. So that will be nothing but all equal weights. So I basically taken an integral over this curve over here, and I find out where it's my mean located, where O is having maximum membership value. I denote all the curves and I find out what is the maximum membership value. Similarly is what is the least of maximum. My least of maximum says I am again going to find out the region where the maximum membership value is displayed. I am again going to find out the region where my maximum membership value is displayed, but I will return this point. Here I was returning the mean, here I will return the lowest. So that is basically minimum of O, where O has maximum membership value. And similarly I can return this point over here, that is called as the maximum. And the last one would be the maximum, sometimes also referred to as the largest of maximum. That is nothing but the maximum of O, where O has maximum membership value. So I find out the region where the maximum membership value is being displayed, and then I do simply one thing. I find out the maximum output value. I find out the maximum of it, and that is what I exactly return. So these three are the different kinds of defalsification operator: the least, the maximum, and the minimum of the mean, the maximum, and the minimum of the maximum that we take. And again, used for numerous kinds of tasks. Again, if we had some kind of aggregation in which there was a lot of one coming, so it will be something like this over here over various places, and we can take out the mean, maximum, or minimum, whatever the system may have. All these kinds of defalsification operator have got some analogy to when it comes towards the natural world. Again, it is important to realize why were they modeled like that. The mean is nothing but different rules. Mean is nothing but different output values being true to some different extent, and we say that let me be more biased towards the membership values having more membership value and less towards less membership value. So simply let me take out the weighted mean. That's what's employed. The bisector acts as a mediator that tries to intervene between both these areas. It tries to find out an area where both these values get equally divided. So that's again an attempt to find out values where both kind of membership values denoting where both kinds of outputs having high membership value as well as low membership value are in balance with each other. That is what the bisector basically tries to do. And the other three, we've got the other three, the least, the minimum, and the maximum of maximum. What these three believe in, that let me state that the maximum membership value is what is the final output. Let me take this for granted, but then I have various crest values that showcase this. So I'll be more aligned towards the least, I'll be more aligned towards the more, or I'll take it a middle way out. That is what these three techniques again mean. So physical relevance can be found out when we model the actual system, the actual application, and how do they believe. Then is when, especially when we come into the application domain, then is when we get into an idea into all how these different kind of defalsification operators and how all they operate and how all they behave. Let me take in a very quick system modeling approach. Again, a fictitious example that I will be taking. And let me again summarize this entire domain of fuzzy system. That is the last topic that we'll be taking for today. We'll touch upon some other interesting topic of fuzzy modeling as well as the understanding of the fuzzy systems into the next hour. That will finish off the fuzzy inference system part. I have an input that has two outputs. That has one output and two input. Let me again say the input was a load and a rain. And the output was nothing but a drive. I divided this into three parts: low, medium, and high. I divided load into bad and good. I divided this into 5 parts: very careless, very careful, and medium. So I had for rain 3 curves, let me say like this. For load, let me say 2 curves like this. And for drive, let me say 5 curves like this. Low, medium, high, bad, good. This would be very careful, medium, careless, and very careless. This would be very careless, and this would be very careful. Right now we will not consider why only 2, 3, and 5, the number of membership function, how this shape came in. These are of course, the limitation of fuzzy inference systems. But let us assume that they are there. They are there because some designer has tried various combination and come out with this design to be the optimal, that the design would be 3, 2 and 5. We'll discuss over some issues of this into the later part. All with a lower bound and an upper bound, all having some membership function. This is what the designer already gave us. This is what the designer already gave us. The design more or less will be coming into the application domain. We have the set of rules. So let me say 3 rules that we already had. If road is bad and rain is high, then drive careful, and similarly these two domain. There were a set of 3 rules, let me say they were all 3 of them that we already had. Whenever I am applying this kind of, again, how these rules were framed, we currently have no idea. This is the work of the designer. We normally try various rules. We try numerous rules and see out which combination fits in the best. But once given the system, how do I compute my system output for any applied input? How do I compute my system output whenever I am given any kind of input? So all that I do is that my first task is calculate membership values of all inputs for all membership functions. So let me say my rain at any point was given by 35 centimeter and my road at any point was given by 0.3 as the index. I calculate 35 centimeter over here. Low will have a value of 0.8. Medium will have a value of, let's say, 0.15. High will have a value of 0.2. This is 0.8. This is 0.15. And this is what is 0. For any applied input, I'll calculate all these 3 values. Again, for road 0.3, let me say 0.3 was somewhere around here. This is 0.05. And let me say this is almost 1, so let me say 0.95. So bad is to the degree of 0.95, good is 0.05. So if they are n1 number of membership functions that my input 1 is divided into, I'll get n1 membership values for the first input. If there are n2 membership functions in which my second input is divided, I'll get n2 value of my second membership function. So I have got in this case 3 plus 2, 5 membership values. I have got 5 membership values, 0.8, 0.15, 0, 0.3, 0.95 and 0.05. Now I apply this rule. Road and bad, the membership value is, for road it was here, bad 0.95 and rain is high 0, that means I get a membership value of 0.95 and 0, 0, that is my antecedent path. I solve the consequent path, drive is careful. Let me not say careful, let me say drive is, okay, I guess I have careful over here. This is careful, so this is my membership value. So I solve antecedent, I solve consequence. I solve the antecedent part of it, I solve the consequent part of it. When I apply the implication operator, this value over this consequent part of it, I'll slice down. Let me say I have applied the min as the operator. I'll slice down across 0. So the output of these two will be nothing but a 0. I'll apply this part, I'll get 0 as the output. Let me very quickly, rub out this entire part of it. I would have loved drawing the entire system as a whole. I've got some shortage of space. So let me say rule 1 gave me this as the output. Rule 2 was if load is good and rain is low, then drive carelessly. So road is good. It had a membership value of, let's say, 0.8. Rain is low. It had, let's say, a membership value of, I don't remember, but let me assume it to be 0.7. Drive 0.8 and 0.7 would mean 0.7. Min operation. Drive carefully had something like this. I'll slash it across 0.7. So my second rule will come out to be something like this. Similarly, let me say my third rule came out to be something like this. I'll aggregate these three rules. Let me say by the max operator, this contributes nothing, so it's like almost gone. It contributes something like this, and then I'll have this curve up here. It is here. And let me say that I was using centroid. Let me say it is between 0 to 100. It's on the scale of 0 to 100. These three represent the same output, so the scale would be same. This would again be on the scale of 0 to 100. Let me say this was 75. Let me say this was 25. This was some 33. So my centroid will give me this as the output. Let me call it as, I guess this will be somewhere around 58. And that is how I get my file system output. So all I've done very quickly is that I've applied the various, as the first step I applied the various membership functions, I've falsified the inputs, I've calculated all the antecedent part of it, all the consequent part of it, applied the implication operator, aggregated the results, and defalsified the output using all the any kind of operators that we have studied so far. One thing that you see was that only 2 rules fired out of 3. In reality, if you make it 15 systems, only some 4 might fire. So not all rules might be active at all times. So that is, given any system, I can calculate the output. Given any system, given any input, I can know how to calculate the output. The same methodology in which I use a neural network, in which my first task was that I modeled in the neural network. I said that whenever you apply an input, you will get in some kind of output. Exactly the same thing that I've done over here. That I say that if I give you any system, you can use any input and get some kind of output. But the basic paradigm in how we design this system is something left unanswered. We'll touch up some key points about that. We'll touch in some key points about how to design the system. Of course, because it's a rule-based system, it's entirely upon the designer who needs to manually frame in rules based on his best understanding. So, no training algorithm over here, but we'll still touch upon some special kinds of system. We'll design practices, and then we'll into the next hour, we'll see how we all do this, and that will what will end the third pillar of soft computing, that's the fuzzy inference system.